In every generation, a few individuals rise whose names survive the erosion of time. Warriors who conquered, kings who ruled with iron fists, heroes who changed nations. But among them stands one figure whose power was not found in the sword, but in the mind. A king whose life shines like gold, yet ends like dust. A king who asked for wisdom and changed the world. This is the story of Solomon, son of David, builder of the temple, judge of nations, and the man remembered as the wisest who ever lived. But behind the glory lies a deeper truth. Wisdom alone cannot save a heart from itself, and even the greatest mind on earth is vulnerable to the quiet pull of desire. If you enjoy epic biblical documentaries brought to life with cinematic detail, don't forget to subscribe. Now, let us step into ancient Jerusalem, into a world of kings, prophets, betrayal, glory, gold, and tragedy.
Solomon was born into a palace filled with tension, politics, and prophetic destiny. To understand Solomon, we must first understand the world he entered. King David, his father, was nearing the end of a turbulent life, a life marked by battlefields, victories, exile, scandal, repentance, and restoration. David's household was large and complicated, with multiple wives and children who constantly competed for influence, attention, and succession. Among them was Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. Her story was woven into the monarchy with pain and controversy. Her first child with David died as a consequence of David's sin. But in the aftermath of repentance, God offered an unexpected act of mercy, another son. This son was Solomon. The scriptures say God sent the prophet Nathan to deliver a message. The Lord loved him. That one sentence set Solomon apart from the moment he took his first breath. As a child, Solomon grew up surrounded not by warfare like David, but by administration, scholars, prophets, and diplomats. He absorbed everything around him: the poetry of the Psalms, the laws of Moses, the traditions of Israel, and the wisdom of surrounding cultures. Unlike his brothers, he was not shaped by battle, but by thought. He watched court officials settle disputes, listened to the elders, and learned how the kingdom functioned behind the scenes. David noticed his quiet brilliance. He saw in Solomon what he had never seen in any of his other sons: a mind capable of ruling a nation not by intimidation, but through discernment. But as Solomon approached adulthood, the question of succession grew dangerous. David had many sons, many contenders, and each believed he should inherit the throne. This was the world Solomon was born into, a world of hope, but also a world of looming conflict.
As David's health declined, the palace became a battlefield without swords. One of David's ambitious sons, Adonijah, believed the throne was rightfully his. He was older, popular, handsome, and charismatic, everything ancient nations expected in a king. When he saw David growing weaker, he acted swiftly. Adonijah gathered influential allies: Joab, the commander of David's army; Abiathar, a powerful priest; several influential nobles. Then he hosted a massive coronation feast. Animals were slaughtered, music played, wine flowed. The elites of Israel shouted, "Long live King Adonijah!" It was a political coup unfolding in real time. Meanwhile, Solomon had no army with him, no military commander, no powerful faction behind his name, just a promise David made to Bathsheba, that her son would reign after him. When Nathan the prophet heard of Adonijah's dangerous move, he rushed to Bathsheba and urged her to act immediately. Together, they went to David, whose body was weak, but whose authority remained absolute. Bathsheba reminded him of his vow. Nathan confirmed the crisis. David realized that acting now meant saving the kingdom from civil war. So, in a dramatic reversal, David ordered an official coronation. Solomon was taken to the Gihon spring, mounted on David's own mule, an unmistakable sign of royal legitimacy, and anointed by Zadok the priest. Trumpets blasted, people shouted, "Long live King Solomon!" The noise was so thunderous that Adonijah's feast collapsed in fear. In a single day, Solomon went from a quiet young prince to the rightful king of Israel. It was not his strategy, not his power, not his influence. It was divine destiny unfolding through the hands of those God positioned around him. But, despite being crowned, Solomon knew he was young. He lacked experience. He lacked the stature of a warrior king. And he felt the weight of leadership pressed deeply on his shoulders, which takes us to the night that would change world history.
After securing his throne, Solomon traveled to Gibeon, where the most significant altar in Israel stood. There, in an extraordinary act of devotion, Solomon offered 1,000 burnt sacrifices. This wasn't just an offering, it was a declaration that he needed God, that the kingdom was beyond his own strength, and that Israel's future depended on divine guidance. That night, after the smoke cleared and silence fell across the camp, Solomon lay down to rest, and in the stillness, the divine entered the mortal. God appeared to him in a dream, with a question offered to no other king in history. "Ask what I shall give thee." The universe opened before Solomon. He could have asked for wealth beyond measure, victory over enemies, power like Pharaoh, a dynasty that would last forever. But instead, Solomon confessed his deepest fear. "I am but a little child. I do not know how to lead." And then he asked for the one thing that would change the world. "Give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people and discern between good and evil." God was pleased, so pleased that he not only granted Solomon unmatched wisdom, but also added riches, honor, and peace. When Solomon woke up, he wasn't the same. He had become the man whose mind would astonish generations, and whose name would become the standard of wisdom for thousands of years. But wisdom must be tested, and Solomon's first test would come swiftly.
Night hangs quietly over the ancient city of Gibeon. The flickering torches tremble in the desert wind. The people sleep, but the young king does not. Solomon walks alone through the sacred high place, the weight of an entire kingdom pressing against his chest. He is not yet the legendary Solomon. He is just a young man, overwhelmed, inexperienced, and painfully aware of it. 1,000 burnt offerings crackle on the altar behind him, the smoke rising like a silent prayer. Solomon kneels. His voice trembles, not from fear, but from honesty. Solomon: "Lord, I am only a child. I do not know how to go out or come in." It is the cry of a leader who isn't blinded by pride, a leader who knows he needs help. That night, something extraordinary happens. The air thickens, light floods the darkness. The presence of the Almighty fills the space. God speaks, not with thunder, but with a calm, powerful voice that shakes Solomon's spirit. God,
Ask what I shall give you. Imagine that moment. The king of the universe asking the young king what he desires most. Solomon does not hesitate. He doesn't ask for armies. He doesn't ask for revenge. He doesn't ask for wealth or fame. Instead, with humility that will define his legacy, he says, "Give your servant an understanding heart to discern between good and evil." This moment becomes the turning point of his entire life. Solomon is saying, "I want to lead well. I want to be fair. I want to serve your people with wisdom." And God is pleased. He answers, "Because you have not asked for riches, long life, or the death of your enemies, I will give you a wise and understanding heart like no one before you and no one after you. And I will give you what you did not ask for, riches and honor." The covenant is sealed. When Solomon wakes up, the world looks the same, but he is not. He rises not just as a king, but as the wisest man who will ever walk this earth.
Not long after receiving divine wisdom, Solomon faces a moment that will echo through history. Two women stand before him trembling with anger and grief. They both claim to be the mother of the same living baby. One child lives, the other has died. There are no witnesses, no evidence, no fingerprints, no way to determine the truth except through pure discernment. Solomon sits on his throne, not yet the emperor of enormous wealth, but a king, proving himself for the first time. The first woman cries, "She rolled over her child at night and killed him. Then she stole mine." The second woman shouts back, "No, the living boy is my son. Hers is the dead one." The court murmurs. Advisors shift nervously. No one can solve this. But Solomon leans forward, studying their faces. He is not just listening to their words, he is reading their hearts. Then he speaks a sentence that freezes the entire courtroom. "Solomon, bring me a sword." A gasp cuts through the room. A sword is placed in the king's hand. Then Solomon declares the shocking verdict. "Solomon, cut the living child in two and give each woman half." The first woman collapses in horror. First woman, "No, give her the child. Please, spare his life." But the second grows stiff, cold, emotionless. Second woman, "Fine, he shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide him." And instantly, without hesitation, Solomon stands up. "Solomon, give the child to the first woman. She is the true mother." Because only a real mother would surrender her child to save his life. News of this judgment spreads across Israel and beyond its borders. And from that day, the world knows Solomon's wisdom is not human. It is divine.
Solomon's rise to fame does not happen overnight. It begins slowly, not with miracles or dramatic battles, but with structure, strategy, and leadership unlike anything Israel has ever seen. Before Solomon, Israel was a nation shaped by war. David fought giants, enemies, insurgents, and political uprisings. But Solomon inherits a kingdom that is finally quiet, finally at peace, finally ready to grow. And he uses that peace like fertile soil. A new vision for Israel. Solomon does not rule like the kings around him. He doesn't rely on intimidation or military dominance. Instead, he rules with systems, organization, and intelligence unlike anything Israel has ever seen. He divides Israel into 12 administrative districts,
not based on bribes or favoritism, but based on economy, geography, and population. Each district has one governor. Each governor is responsible for supplying the palace for 1 month of the year. This means each region gives equally, no tribe is overburdened, corruption becomes harder, resources are distributed with fairness, and loyalty grows naturally. It is a strategy so efficient that even modern governments study it as an early form of taxation and resource management. Solomon is not ruling with brute force, he is ruling with organization. Israel's first golden administration. Under his leadership, Israel sees a structured court system, clear roles for priests, judges, advisors, specialized officials over trade, military, food supply, and labor, record-keeping and documentation, international correspondence through scribes. This is more than government. This is the birth of a civilized empire. Solomon turns Jerusalem into a capital that rivals ancient powerhouses like Babylon, Tyre, and Memphis. His palace becomes a center of diplomacy. Ambassadors flow in and out. Trade agreements flourish. Conflicts decrease. Israel transforms from a survivor nation into an influential one. An explosion of wealth and economic growth. With peace secured, Solomon looks outward. He notices something many rulers miss. Knowledge and trade produce more prosperity than war ever could. He expands Israel's trade routes, north into Phoenicia, west toward the Mediterranean, east toward Arabia, south into Africa. Caravans fill the roads, merchants fill the markets. The ports along the Red Sea overflow with spices, gold, linen, incense, copper, timber, and precious stones. Israel becomes a crossroads for global commerce, and the world takes notice. Agricultural boom. Solomon invests in the land itself. He builds irrigation systems, expands vineyards and olive orchards, plants fields of barley and wheat, creates granaries that store food for drought or famine, encourages farmers with fair taxation and predictable harvest cycles. A kingdom that once struggled to survive yearly threats now produces more than enough. Farmers prosper, villages grow, cities expand. Israel becomes a nation where famine becomes rare and abundance becomes normal. This is perhaps the most groundbreaking change. For the first time in Israel's history, education and scholarship become national values. Solomon gathers historians, poets, musicians, philosophers, astronomers, strategists, botanists, and animal behavior experts. He builds a court that functions like an ancient university. People travel from neighboring lands to hear lectures, learn wisdom, and record proverbs. The king's own writings, thousands of proverbs, and over 1,000 songs become templates for morality, leadership, and human behavior. Israel becomes a place where wisdom is as valuable as gold. Peace under Solomon's rule. For the first time since the age of Joshua, Israel experiences extended peace. Not months, not years, but decades. The borders are secured. Allies surround the nation. Trade agreements replace battlefields. Diplomacy becomes the new sword. Children grow up without hearing the cry of war trumpets. Men farm more than they fight. Families build homes, expand businesses, and live without fear. Scripture describes this era like this: every man lived in safety under his own vine and fig tree.
a poetic image of a nation so safe you could rest peacefully under your tree without fear of invasion. Solomon's leadership philosophy. Unlike kings who rule through fear, Solomon rules through wisdom. He studies human nature. He observes patterns of behavior. He counsels leaders with logic, morality, and strategy. His proverbs guide the nation. A soft answer turns away wrath. By wisdom a house is built. Pride goes before destruction. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. In all your ways acknowledge God, and He will direct your paths. These teachings carve themselves into the people's hearts. The people's daily life under Solomon. For the average Israelite, life improves dramatically. Markets grow larger and more diverse. Voices of violence grow quieter. Roads become safer. Water systems improve. Housing expand. Food becomes plentiful. And local judges apply Solomon's laws fairly. This is why people love Solomon, not just because he is wise, but because his wisdom changes their everyday lives. He brings stability, and stability brings happiness. A nation prepared for greatness. Every decision Solomon makes, from allies to administration to agriculture, builds toward one monumental goal: creating the wealth, peace, and infrastructure needed to build the greatest temple the world had ever seen. Israel is transformed, not by war, not by conquest, but by leadership rooted in wisdom, strategy, and peace. Solomon is crafting a golden age, brick by brick, law by law, and decision by decision. The kingdom is ready. Its people are prepared. Its treasury is full. Its influence is rising. And now, it is time for Solomon's greatest undertaking: the building of the temple of the Lord.
Solomon had wisdom, wealth, and the admiration of the nations. But above all, he had a vision of a home for God, a sanctuary that would stand as a testament to divine glory for generations to come. David had long dreamed of this temple, but it was Solomon's hands, Solomon's mind, and Solomon's dedication that would bring it into reality. The vision and planning. Before a single stone was laid, Solomon called the wisest artisans, builders, and priests in Israel. He consulted Hiram, the skilled craftsman and king of Tyre, who had constructed grand palaces and temples in Phoenicia. Together, they designed a temple of unprecedented grandeur. Solomon's instructions were meticulous. The inner sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, would be a perfect cube, 20 cubits each side, to symbolize perfection. Cedar from Lebanon would form the walls and beams, chosen for its durability, fragrance, and elegance. Gold would line the walls, reflecting the light of the sun and creating a glow as if the heavens themselves were descending. Carvings of cherubim, palm trees, and flowers would adorn the walls, symbols of life, peace, and divine protection. Every decision was deliberate. Every detail spoke of reverence. Every nail and timber became an act of worship. The construction. The construction of the temple was monumental. 30,000 laborers were drafted. 70,000 men carried supplies. 80,000 stonecutters shaped the massive stones with precision. The work was so sacred that the sound of iron tools could not be heard at the holy site. Stones were cut and shaped in distant quarries. The workers labored not just with skill, but with devotion. Every swing of the chisel, every lift of a timber was accompanied by prayer. Every night, the workers would gaze at the rising structure and feel as if they were building something eternal. The temple completed. After 7 long years, the temple was finished. The walls shimmered with gold, the beams glowed with cedar, and the carved cherubim seemed to guard the sanctuary. The inner sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, was reserved for the high priest alone, where the Ark of the Covenant would rest. On the day of dedication, Solomon called together all Israel. Priests carried the Ark into the temple with solemnity and awe. And then, as if the heavens themselves had descended, fire came down from God, filling the temple. Smoke billowed. The crowd fell to the ground, and the people knew the glory of the Lord had entered the house Solomon had built. Solomon stood before the people, humbled. His greatest achievement was not wealth, not wisdom, not political power. It was this sacred house, a beacon for generations.
Word of Solomon's wisdom and wealth spread far and wide. Nations whispered tales of the young king whose judgments were flawless, whose decisions were just, and whose mind surpassed any scholar or philosopher. Among those who heard the stories was a queen, the Queen of Sheba. Her kingdom, distant and prosperous, had heard of Solomon's wealth, wisdom, and fame. And she was curious. Was this young king truly as wise as the legends claimed, or was it merely exaggeration? Her journey. The queen's journey was arduous and dramatic. Thousands of miles across deserts, mountains, and rivers. Camels laden with gold, spices, rare gems, and exotic animals. Servants, attendants, and guards, all moving in a grand caravan that mirrored her royal power. She traveled not just to admire wealth, but to test Solomon's mind. She brought riddles, questions, and challenges that had puzzled the wisest scholars in her own kingdom. Her arrival was a spectacle. Jerusalem had never seen such grandeur enter its gates. Soldiers and servants bowed, merchants paused their trades, and scholars whispered about the queen's curiosity and prestige. When she finally stood before Solomon, she observed his throne of ivory and gold, his advisors dressed in intricate robes, tables overflowing with delicacies from across the world, scholars, scribes, and diplomats organized in a disciplined court. Then the test began. The queen asked questions no ordinary king could answer. She posed riddles, mysteries, and challenges from her own kingdom. Solomon answered them all, not with arrogance, but with insight, humility, and clarity. She was astonished. Her eyes reflected awe, and her respect grew. Queen of Sheba, your wisdom surpasses even the stories I have heard. Truly, your glory comes from the God of Israel. Her visit cemented Israel's influence beyond its borders. She brought gifts, alliances were formed, and Solomon's fame spread across continents.
Solomon's reign was not only marked by wisdom and temples, it was an era of unprecedented wealth, global influence, and cultural flourishing. Israel became a hub for trade, learning, and diplomacy. Caravans arrived from Africa, Arabia, and distant lands, bringing exotic animals, rare spices, ivory, precious metals, and luxurious fabrics. The extent of wealth,
666 talents of gold annually, enough to astound any neighboring kingdom. Trade fleets brought ivory, apes, peacocks, and other treasures from across the seas. Grand palaces, store cities, and administrative buildings rose across Israel. But Solomon's wealth was more than material. It was strategic. Every alliance, every trade route, every diplomatic marriage strengthened Israel's position in the world. Cultural and intellectual achievements. Solomon was not only a ruler, but a patron of knowledge. He wrote thousands of proverbs, guidance on morality, leadership, human behavior, and wisdom. Composed over 1,000 songs celebrating God, life, and the wonders of creation. Studied plants, animals, astronomy, and natural sciences. Jerusalem became a center of scholarship and culture, admired by scholars, kings, and diplomats from around the globe. Global influence and diplomacy. Solomon's influence stretched beyond Israel's borders. Kings sent ambassadors seeking wisdom and guidance. Caravans carried gifts to cement alliances. Trade agreements with Egypt, Phoenicia, and distant kingdoms ensured Israel's dominance. Israel's reputation grew not from conquest, but from diplomacy, wisdom, and governance. The nation became a model of prosperity, stability, and civilization. The legacy. Despite human flaws that would later emerge, Solomon's reign left a lasting mark. Wisdom literature guiding generations. The temple standing as a symbol of faith. Political and economic systems influencing neighboring nations. A global reputation for fairness, intellect, and prosperity. Solomon's life reminds us that true greatness is not measured by armies or riches, but by the wisdom to lead, the courage to act justly, and the vision to build a legacy that lasts.
And so ends the story of King Solomon, the wisest king Israel has ever known. He brought peace, built a temple, and ruled with wisdom that amazed the world. His life reminds us that true greatness comes from wisdom, humility, and justice. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. May Solomon's lessons inspire you to seek wisdom in your own life.